Good morning. I'm your host, Dr. Brian Jones. I'm joined here today with my special guest, John Kennebrew, LPC.
That's right.
Yep, Brian Jones, LPC here. So we are joined here today, and I'm so excited that you all are a part of this wonderful broadcast, the Therapeutic Conversation Show, where we're having conversations around mental health, spirituality, and empowerment. So I'm so excited that John is in the house.
Thank you.
And he is an African-American male therapist.
That's right.
Psychotherapist. And I'm so glad he's a licensed professional counselor here in Georgia, the same as I am. And so I'm so excited. And we are connected by Hillside International Truth Center.
That's
we
right.
both have partnerships with them. And you're going to hear a little bit about John and his work with youth. So today we're going to be talking, we're still celebrating and that's what we're going to do for our therapeutic moment today. We're still celebrating the Mental Health Awareness Month, where we're breaking the stigmas of mental health, as well as raising the bar and the knowledge of mental health, especially in spiritual communities. And so, John, I'm just so excited that you're here. How are
Thank
you?
Great. I'm excited to be here.
Yes.
I know we've been trying to make it happen for a little bit. So.
Well, you a busy man. That's what it is.
It's
You just busy.
work, you know.
You busy. But anyway, I'm just glad you're here, and I'm glad you could take time to just be a part of this show and everything. And thank you. I haven't known John too long, but you know, there's no strangers sometimes, especially when we're in this work, this mental health work. I did get a chance to attend his awards banquet. Well, it was more than a banquet. It was a high event. I mean, it was wonderful. I mean, actually, and it was a fundraiser, and it was just a wonderful event that John had. And it was just powerful. Well done.
Thank you.
But I just appreciate your heart for mental health. And also for the community and for our youth. Yeah. So I know people are going to have their pens and pencils and paper ready to take notes about some strategies to help our youth. But let's always begin in a word of meditation and prayer. God, we thank you for this moment in this time. We thank you for 108 Praise Radio and Courtney and the staff here. We just thank you for such a time as this, all that's going on in our community, in our government, in our world, in our spiritual centers and churches, and just so many different things are going on, and we're just honored to be here to be able to talk about mental health. And we know that it is a part of our spiritual community and our spiritual development, and it's very vital for us to really understand you for what you have called us to. God, bless us today. Bless somebody. Let someone get the information that they need. Let someone get the knowledge that they need. And we also pray that someone will be encouraged and blessed today. In your name, I give thanks. Amen.
Amen.
All right. So, John, tell the people a little bit about you.
Sure. All right.
They're right there.
Sometimes I don't even know where to start when I get into it, but I'll stick with the work. Currently, I founded an organization about 5 years ago, and this organization is called the
Showcase Group, right?
That's right. And Showcase Group really goes into youth detention centers. That's where we start our work. Mm-hmm. There are over 2,000 kids currently detained in Georgia's youth detention centers, and there are over 50,000 kids incarcerated nationwide for nonviolent offenses.
Well,
nonviolent offenses, these kids are incarcerated. And we're talking from 12 to 17 years old.
You said nonviolent offenses.
Nonviolent offenses.
Okay, I'm listening.
They're in the justice system. So Showcase Group really goes into these youth detention centers, and we help to equip these kids with the skills and the tools, the social and emotional intelligence that they need to help transition when they go back into the community, so they make better choices. So they're mentally prepared to face those challenges that they're going to face once they go back.
Okay, and so that's, that's vital. And I was looking at the statistics. The National Alliance for Mental Health, NAMI, says that 1 in every 5 youth of the ages of 13 to 18, which is 21.4%, experience a severe mental health condition at some point during their lives. I'll repeat that. 1 in every 5 ages 13 to 18 experience a severe mental health condition at some point during their life. And then for children ages 8 to 15, there is a 13% estimate. So 1 in every 5 are experiencing some kind of severe mental condition. And what you're saying is not just experiencing a mental health condition at that age, but they also are being incarcerated.
And if you can imagine the psychological effects on a young mind, you know, as young as 12 years old, again, they're entering these youth detention centers. They're going behind a series of barbed wire fences. They're going behind high security doors. You know, they're seeing all of these things. And many of these things we see in adult corrections. But when we look at a 12-year-old experiencing the same things that an adult would experience with an undeveloped mind, that's why we're receiving the results that we're receiving. And so these kids will return to a youth detention center in less than 2 years. So over 50% of the kids return to a youth detention center in less than 2 years. And what's really unfortunate is only about 30%, since we're hitting on the mental health aspect, only about 30% of the kids in youth detention centers actually receive mental health treatment, when we know and all the data points to over 70% needing mental health treatment.
Wow.
So you can imagine the trauma or whatever happened to actually get them in a place of being in lockdown. Over 70% of these kids need intervention.
Yeah, and even as you're talking, John, I think that, I mean, I'm just imagining being a young person and getting incarcerated and the trauma that is definitely associated with that, because we're talking about it from a mental health perspective as well, and a spiritual perspective. But imagine, you know, and I'm just saying it to you all too, imagine the trauma that a 12-year-old that's arrested for what? Let's just use a case here.
Many are in poverty type situations. So theft is a major crime. And a lot of it is based on basic needs. You know, it's unfortunate, but when we don't have our basic needs met, sometimes we make bad decisions in order to have those needs met. So many times it's, you know, a 12-year-old goes in, he stole something from a car. We have other crimes that are very interesting. You know, you hear a lot about the school to prison pipeline. And so with that, you know, you have kids now getting in a fight at school. Just recently, I heard a story of a guy who is in one of the facilities, and he was in a fight. He was bullied for several weeks at school, finally decided to stand up for himself, and ended up really hurting the other guy who he got in the fight with. But this kid's never in fights. Scared to death, 12 years old, enters the youth detention center. First experience of being incarcerated. First experience of going through all of the traumas of meeting, you know, everything that happens within a detention center. But what are those next steps? You know, that's from school to prison. There is no intervention in school that stops them from being incarcerated. And as taxpayers, we pay over $90,000 a year. $90,000 a year for one kid to be incarcerated.
For a child? I didn't even know. Say that again. That's something.
Yeah, we're paying about $90,000 a year for a kid to be incarcerated. And when it comes to adult corrections, it usually averages out about $30,000.
Wow.
So if you can own a private prison system for juvenile justice, or if you can own a private facility, and you can keep those tenants occupying your units, you can come out all right.
Now, John, you said that in a very eloquent, educated way. But let's put it in the layman's term way. Is what you're saying, it's a business.
It is a business. It is
that if we keep people imprisoned, especially youth, and keep them in there for long periods of time, that somebody's making some money. See, we can talk about that on this show.
That's the name of the game. That's the name of the game. And you
but
know,
you said it in an eloquent way. It was very eloquent. I got it because
I
you
try and
represent
keep
something
it.
that you know. But I work for myself, so I'm gonna say, well, I'm just joking. But no, on a serious note, that is the truth. I mean, that is where we are in our community. What do you think is pushing, these young people to be incarcerated, to do some of these crimes? I mean, you really have your pulse and your heart out in the community, and definitely we're going to talk about the Showcase Group in a few minutes, and that's what you all are doing is because the question is, we can talk about the problem, and we want to stay on the problem right now, then we're going to talk about some strategies and some things that people can do to help their young people, because I know people are listening that have children, and they want to definitely know some strategies and some signs and some interventions that may be helpful for them to be able to do it. But the question is, what can we? what causes someone mentally to as a youth? What are you seeing?
Well, we have to consider that, I mean, these kids aren't addicted to crime. You know, they don't necessarily want to go out and do a lot of these things. A lot of times they're stuck in poverty. And so because of that, they are going and making a lot of bad choices around that. You know, we attribute a lot to environmental as well. And so we learn from the people around us. We learn from the mentors who are around us. And so if that mentor is my brother, and he is great at selling drugs, then that is the skill that I am acquiring
that you learn
naturally, you know? So a lot of times it's kind of our circle of influence and the people that we have around us, and systematically things have been done in an effort to kind of pigeonhole us.
Got you. And I think that, you know, and I think we're going to see more and more of it, unfortunately.
Right.
And so we need to be ready. And this is what I've been saying, John, and you maybe haven't been watching every show.
Not every show.
But the point that I've been making is that we're going to see an increase in crime. We're going to see an increase in services being cut from the national level and defunding programs that have been supporting our communities for many years and everything. We're going to see that. And as we see that, people are going to turn to spiritual communities, and this is just my theory, spiritual communities and churches for help. And we need to be ready, and not just ready in a spiritual sense only, you know, the Bible and all of that for some of you all's beliefs, but we got to be ready mentally and be prepared and have persons in place in these spiritual communities and churches that are licensed and trained to be able to handle mental health, because some people, I mean, just think about it. And I know I've been talking about this, and I'm talking to the audience. I've been talking about this for a long time, about if someone walks in your church or in your spiritual community that's suicidal. And I have seen it. I have been in churches and been in Bible studies and things where someone walked in and said, I want to commit suicide. My question is, do you have a plan in place, or do you just carry them to the altar and start praying? And that's what I'm seeing, John. I'm seeing, you know, because they don't know. And no one tries to have a conversation. They just, you know, think it's a prayer issue. And I'm not saying we don't pray, but I think that there's some other steps God has, or Spirit has given us that we can follow in that. But it just, you know, the reason why I'm saying it, because it shows how unprepared we are. And they're going to come looking for hope. They're going to come looking for guidance. They're going to come looking for those things, you know, type of things.
We have community engagement events, and what I was saying a few Sundays back, especially in church, is that's where the conversation starts. And a lot of times we don't take the time to even, you know, we have a short segment where we may say hug a neck, you know, and praise the Lord. And that's the only interaction that we have with other people in the congregation.
So you talking about small groups and everything, huh? Process groups, huh?
There you go. You know.
And I want to say this too. John spoke at, shouts out to Dr. Barbara King, who's our spiritual leader. And my spiritual leader. But he spoke at Hillside International Truth Center a couple weeks ago, and he talked about consciousness and awareness, and he did several activities. What you call them, stems?
Sentence stems.
Yeah. But explain just briefly what that means, because that was powerful. It was an interactive lesson. You know, John wasn't up there trying to preach necessarily, but he was up there giving an activity that kind of helped people think differently. And I was a participant in it. I was in the audience, and I really enjoyed asking a stranger, you know, that I didn't even know. I was sitting next to in church, and I didn't even know the person. But as we begin to do this activity during your message or your lesson, it really began to help, and it was so helpful.
Thank you.
So what does that STEM mean? And just give them one activity that you did, and then we'll move on.
So sentence stems really can help us when it comes to our self-awareness. And so one of the things that I was doing during that talk, as I would call it, was really making individuals more aware of how we get in our heads. A lot of times we have negative self-talk that will back us out of situations. And this can be for good or for bad, but often as we go into our negative self-talk, it's a bad thing. we say what we can't do or what we're not smart enough to do or what we don't have the ability to do. We go over that time and time again in our heads. Instead of focusing on the negative self-talk, we have to identify that powerful self-talk that we have for ourselves.
Yes.
But we don't tend to focus on that because naturally we're around people who tend to complain or don't see the positive side of things, or woe is me, or, you know, this is my situation. But we have to tap into our own powerful self-talk, and then we can start to share that with others. But we gotta focus on self.
And that was powerful. I really enjoyed that, that lesson. And it also shows that we go to spiritual centers and churches, and we never speak to the person that's next to us.
Right.
We'll say hello, as you said, give them a hug, him or her a hug, and then that's it. So, I mean, I just think that that's a powerful thing. And I'm also going to put a plug out for John. John is available to come to your churches and spiritual centers, as a speaker, but also as, as a facilitator. Sure. So, I mean, I'm just honored, for you to be here today.
Thank you.
But just the work that you do on a serious note, I just think it's awesome.
I appreciate
that.
And
I just think it's awesome that you're also representing an African-American male therapist, because we do not see a lot of us. I know in my program, there was maybe 2.
Right.
And 1 dropped out, and I was the only one left.
Yeah.
And then in your program, I mean, how many African-American males were in your program?
It's interesting.
In the master's training program.
I had a conversation with a friend of mine who, he's a master's in fine arts, but he was saying that as he went through his master's program, there were only 3 other African-American men in that program. Mm-hmm. And he talked about the importance of walking across the stage. And I remember when I got my master's in psychology counseling, I was like, I got it, I achieved, I know that I'm a minority in this field, but we spoke to how important it is for others to see an African-American male walk across the stage. Yes. And it kind of made me feel like, wow, I should have walked, I should have represented in that way.
Yes.
So, but definitely it's very important that we have more minorities get involved in this work.
Yes.
Because it helps to, especially the clients that we're serving, it makes it more relatable.
Yes, yes, and I think that's powerful. So please, we are so glad. Let me call out some names. Can you see the screen too over there? Let's call out. Oh, you can't see it either. And I'm right here beside it. Is it Beatrice?
Beatrice.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for joining us. Who's this? Liv? Okay. I'm not good at some of these names.
I saw, Kelly
was Valentine on. Thank you for joining us. Jacosta's joining us. I'm just trying to give a shout out to everybody. Please, you can definitely call in. This is a powerful conversation. We're going to talk about some strategies in a few minutes to help to save our youth and children. But you can call in at 770-988-6461. That's 770-988-6461. I think it's showing up on the screen now. Or you can just send us a comment on Facebook. Say hello to us. Ask a question. I know that we got young people out there and parents out there that have questions. We have an expert here talking about our young people and saving our young people, also from a mental health perspective, but also in the community, because we got all kinds of things that are going on. So we're glad that John is here today to at least answer some questions, to talk, to have this dialogue that's so needed, because people go around saying, our youth are, or for tomorrow, but I mean, they're the church, they're the community for today.
That's right. This is the future workforce that we're talking about. And it's a hidden population. This is my passion, is really focusing on the juvenile justice aspect of it.
Okay, talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, when we see these kids incarcerated time and time again, and these kids are going in 2, 3, 4, 5 times into the juvenile justice system, recidivism is at an all-time high.
Yes, it is.
And we've been working to reduce those numbers for several years, but the fact that a lot of our kids are still in impoverished type situations still, directs a lot of the decisions that they're making. But the good thing is neuroplasticity, as we look into the brain and how the brain works. My business partner, Dr. Edward Valentine, is a neuroscientist. And so we focus a lot on how is the brain actually functioning and molding and folding, if you will, as these kids are starting to make the decisions that they're making.
Oh, now you're on to something.
We know that we can reshape.
Wow.
We can reshape because I mean, it isn't until the age of 25 that the brain is truly developed in a way to receive information and clearly process that information and make decisions based on it. And so, you know, we look at a 25-year-old that is incarcerated and we say, oh, well, you know, he isn't functioning fully because he's thinking on a 12-year-old level. However, we'll have a 12-year-old incarcerated for the same thing that the 25-year-old did and serve the same sentence.
And that's, you know, scientifically proven too, John, because I'm reading a book, I think it's called That Your Brain is Keeping Score. Or something, and I'm going to have to share the book with you, and it's a powerful book. I think I got the title right. I'll put it in the comments. But I mean, it really talks exactly what you're saying, is that our brains, you know, and you know, has to do with, you know, the environment, as you said, but also genetics and also just development. But everything that goes on, and that's what I'm saying to you all too out there, is that everything that goes on in your experience, in your understanding, I mean, your brain is affected. I mean, and it can be, as you said, positive or negative. I mean, because life is challenging for all of us. So we got to be reminded and remember that, you know, we have to work with our minds, our brains, our understanding, our awareness, our consciousness. All of those things are vital, because you cannot be spiritually healthy and your brain and your mind and your thoughts are negative.
Exactly. You know,
unhealthy.
Yeah, we focus so much on, you know, like Maslow hierarchy of needs. We focus on these.
Now, they don't know. They may not know what that is.
They may.
So what is that? Because you're dropping some educated stuff.
Well,
I love it.
Hierarchy of needs are often based on food and needing resources that we would think of like, right out of the gate, clothing. But one of the major needs, which is actually not at the top of the needs list for Maslow hierarchy of needs, is that social interaction.
There you go.
And that's a basic need, but it is now becoming even more of a priority, just like food and nourishment. You know, when babies are born, they spend time with their mothers. And sometimes when the nurses will take them out of the room, the baby goes bananas. Because they need that connection that they've been accustomed to. Our kids are often ripped away from social environments that they grew up in. And so if you can imagine experiencing trauma after trauma after trauma, and all you've known is trauma. So we're talking as young as you could possibly process, 2 years old, you've been in traumatic situations. That is your norm. And that's what Oprah had been saying too, about the trauma-infused care that we've been you know, that, of course, therapists been talking about for years. No disrespect to Oprah, but I'm glad she's saying something about it and people are listening. But that trauma-infused care it kind of helps persons, you know, work through those things, and asking the question is not just what your behavior is now, but what happened to you. What's really going on? And I think that is number one strategy, in my opinion, to helping our youth, that we got to start talking to our youth and not talking at them. Exactly. Help them understand.
That's number one, strategy number one.
Yeah, great. I think that's a great place to start, because we see ourselves in children that we're talking to, and we say, well, I don't want you to make the same mistakes that I make. So I'm going to talk at you. I'm going to tell you all of the things that I did wrong. And we don't take the time to listen. Listen to what they have going on and help them to process and make better decisions through their experiences. We get and the ego does that. You know, we can get caught up in ourselves. We can get caught up in what we have to say. But we have to take the time to listen to our kids and allow them their own self-expression, and they become more self-aware.
Okay, that's number two. You said allow what?
Allow them to express their own self-expression.
And what does that mean?
You know, we usually identify self-expression through creativity and showcase groups, so a lot of our interventions are very creative. And tapping into your self-expression is, what do you like? What do you enjoy? What drives you? You know, sometimes we will enter the workforce because this job pays well. Versus people who tend to be happier in their careers choose things that they're really interested in. And we have to help our kids identify those things that work for them. You know, we oftentimes want to implement, well, this worked for me. I'm going to preach it to you. I'm going to tell it to you. And kids don't necessarily receive information that the way adults receive information. So we have to meet them where they are.
Yeah, and I think that's number 2 is allow. I just put it in the comments. Allow self-expression. I think that's very vital and very important to that. What's the third one? Would you suggest to kind of help our youth and to bridge the connection?
I like the idea of being an advocate. What's going on right now within Showcase Group is we have built out an entire advocate program. You hear a lot about mentors and people being paired with kids and those types of things, but we need more people in the community who are trained. And so one of the things that we're providing is advocate training, so individuals can learn how to read an individual service plan for a kid, you know, how to partner and provide resources for a kid, so we can find what is necessary. You know, what do they actually need? Instead of just having a conversation, instead of just going out to dinner, instead of just going to a movie, which exposure is great and that's key, but we need more people who are trained to understand true functions of mental health, and how to actually serve these kids in a way where you can be a resource for these kids.
Yeah, and I think I think you're right on it when it comes to really helping them to feel like that they're children, but you don't have to belittle their thoughts.
Right.
That's what I'm hearing too about being an advocate and being a support. Because a lot of times, and even in my practice, a lot of times the parents come in there and they just, you know, they act like we act like sometimes we ain't never been young.
Right.
You know, we don't have, I mean, we never made mistakes. We never did anything. I can't believe they're talking like that when you used to talk to your parents like that. Right. And so I think that we got to really begin to look at it from a perspective of joining with them and not ostracizing them or belittling them because they do think differently, of course, than we do.
Right.
You know, and I mean, I've just seen the language of talking down to people. Yeah. You know, talking down to your young person, yelling at them and screaming at them and demeaning them, and you know, and I've seen this, and I'm gonna say this, I've seen this a lot of times in my practice with single mothers. You know, shouts out to the single mothers that are holding it down. I'm not, you know, saying anything negative, but I am saying something that I want you all to be mindful of because of the simple fact that, you know, a lot of times, you know, they are, you know, saying things to their children that are so demeaning, especially their male, you know, children, and I mean, and really saying that, you know, I mean, and really abusive.
Those are those
verbally abusive, you know, and expect their young person to grow up to be a productive citizen when you've already spoke negative, down them, never emphasize the positive. That's what I'm saying out there is that we need to start emphasizing things that are positive when it comes to dealing with our young people. I mean, yes, correct them, but also affirm them in some good things that they're doing. You know, say something good. You understand what I'm saying?
Totally, yeah. And you know, in that workshop I did at church, one of the last sentence stems was what I see for you.
Yes, and that was powerful.
You know, and so after individuals had processed between each other kind of the different things that they were going through, different emotions that they're experiencing, the last of the partners got to tell each other what I see for you.
Wow.
And that's really seeing the positive in someone and being able to express that and for that other person to receive it and hear it.
Yeah.
You know, that is powerful because we're continuously planting seeds, whether they're positive or negative. And so when you're saying, you know, you ain't gonna be nothing, I knew these things and all this, you're speaking those things into someone's life. Now, they can choose to reject it if they're strong enough. But oftentimes, from everything this child has gone through, the only thing they can do is just receive it. And some of them receive that as love because that's the first amount of love and attention that they've gotten because someone is speaking into their life, whether it's positive or negative.
Yes, and I think that is vital. And so let's kind of go over the steps again. First, we have to listen.
Right.
You know, listen to what they're saying, and then from a clinical standpoint, we also listen to what they're not saying, but they are saying.
Right.
You know, because body language, just experience, You know when something is wrong
Right.
from a human standpoint with your child. You know, if you're in tune,
Right.
you know that something isn't
Notice.
right. Something has changed in their behavior. They're not eating the way that they used to eat.
Right.
All of those things. So listening to, what's going on with them. Secondly is to allow self-expression. We got to allow them to have some voice, not to be disrespectful. And that's what I do a lot of times in my practice.
Right.
And I know you probably do in your work, is to help them to verbalize things without it being disrespectful.
Right.
But yeah, you can speak up and have a voice, but you don't have to be disrespectful in the way that you're doing it. But you can ask questions,
Right.
you can process, you can do those type of things.
Allow them, and in that creative expression, if they rap, so many of our kids are like, oh, I rap. So many kids are singers.
Yeah.
Allow them to have that self-expression.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so that's important. And then also to speak positive. Right. I think you gotta address the negative behavior,
Right.
but you also have to address something positive and also affirm them.
Right.
Say, no, you can do these things and encourage them. And I don't see that a lot of times in the youth that come to my practice.
Right.
And so I help the parents. I know they bring the youth and
That's
they be
it.
like, Johnny or whoever needs help. Right. But then I'm like, no, you need to be involved in this. Or
Right.
they want to drop the child off and then they don't want to be a part of the therapy.
That's the
I'm like,
disconnect.
absolutely not.
Right.
I'm not going to be with your child unless you are at least in the first session with me.
And that's why
because I
say
need to
that-
see the dynamics.
That awareness of more people being trained, more people attending mental health workshops and conferences. You don't necessarily have to be a mental health professional
Exactly.
to truly understand it. So many of us see it in our families, we see it at work, and we're like, we attribute it to, Miss Such and Such is just crazy. But no,
That's what they go around saying.
Right. There can truly be some mental health issues there that should be addressed and will create for a better experience for that individual person who's seeing it through that person, and also that person who's having those mental health challenges.
Exactly. And I think that's vital. So we have that fourth one. And then I think the fifth one would be getting trained.
Yes.
And I don't think, you don't have to necessarily, as you said, get a license necessarily. Everybody need to get a license for that. Right. But I do think that there are workshops.
That's right.
You're available.
Yeah.
I'm available. The Joshua Generation is available. Showcase Group is available. There's partnerships that we have in the community. The Department of Juvenile Justice, I know you're partnered with them, and I want you to definitely spend a few minutes before we go talking about the Showcase Group and what you're doing. How can they reach you? And we're going to get to that now. But these are just some steps that you can do yourself. Because the question I even ask on Facebook is, what are you going to do about mental health awareness? We know that there's a problem. We know that 1 in every 5 youth are going to experience a mental health situation, and a severe one sometime. Right. And we got to be prepared. And that's why I'm on here talking about this. I'm on here talking about these things because we got to be prepared for when the people come in and be prepared for the people that are there. On Sundays, there's no conversation about mental health. Right. We're not talking about that. We're not telling people, look, pray, number one, but also get some therapy, get some support out there. And that's why I'm here. And I know in the community, some people look at, why is he still talking about mental health? Because there's a problem.
Huge.
There's a huge problem from clergy on to people that are sitting in the pews. Right. We are not addressing mental health. That's my question even last week is how many churches, last Sunday or this Sunday is going to address mental health? Going to at least acknowledge that there's a problem, that we have some issues mentally that we got to continue to work forth and work through and everything like that.
I think one of the issues is, especially when it comes to churches and different communities, they don't really know how to approach it. Yeah, and mental health is still taboo. No one wants to be told that they are bipolar. Yes. It's just it's taboo. No one wants that. And so there are ways that we can ease into that process. Yes. I'm fortunate with the Council for Community Wellness to be able to go into some different communities and really share and break down some of the different aspects of mental health, how to start identifying some things within mental health. And we also, as far as individuals getting trained in advocacy, one thing that Showcase Group is doing to really bridge.
Talk about the Showcase Group because I want to make sure that they understand what that is and how they can reach out.
Excellent. So once we have done interventions in the Youth Detention Center, so one of our programs that's really popular is My Higher Self. And My Higher Self really focuses on social and emotional intelligence that helps individuals understand their own emotions and also understand the emotions of others and show empathy. And once they take that information, they can make better decisions as a result of it. We really don't understand ourselves a lot of times, and so we need to process that for ourselves, but also have someone around to speak to and help to identify some of the things that we need to continue to work on as individuals. But what we've developed is something called the swag bag.
Yeah, and I saw the video.
Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
Go ahead, talk about that.
Very excited about the swag bag initiative. What's going to happen with the swag bag is our kids that we're working with in the detention centers, they've gone through a series of interventions. Some are even in Toastmasters. So they're coming out well equipped with resumes. Many of them have high school diplomas, GEDs. What the swag bag does is it actually keeps us connected to the youth. So there's a critical 90-day window in which a kid could return to a youth detention center. And so everything that we poured into that kid since we met them, you know, many of these kids are locked up 2, 3, 4, 5 years. So everything we poured into that kid, 90 days upon their release could be lost. So we're connecting with these kids through the use of what I'm calling the swag bag. And the swag bag is equipped with a smartphone that is pre-programmed with the contact information of an advocate.
Wow. Okay.
So if we can train some of these listeners as advocates, they will connect with our youth in the community.
So the sixth one is become an advocate.
There you go. Become an advocate. And we can connect with the youth in the community. Now, the importance of staying connected is that that advocate is equipped with an individual service plan. And that service plan has been designed by a licensed professional counselor like Brian or myself, licensed clinical social worker. And that really gives a guide to you as an advocate as to how to lead this youth on the best pathway. So whether that be an educational pathway, residential pathway, some of our kids don't have places to live, or it can be a workforce development pathway, helping them to get a job, you know, because we're talking about kids who they may have a felony, you know, at 12 years old.
Yes.
And so what does that say for the rest of their life to say, okay, well, you know, we don't hire felons here.
Exactly. And that hinders them, and then they be back in the system because they don't have a job or they cannot make an honest living.
That's right.
Because people, you know, have already stigmatize them and say, because you messed up, I can't hire you.
That's right.
And so, I mean, I think that's vital. So this swag bag, I like that. Swag bag.
That's it, right.
You got some swag.
Right.
I like that.
And we have swag in the bag.
Yeah.
So, right. So, you know.
All right, now that's good marketing there.
You know, the biggest piece for me is the advocate connect, you know, because I'm a mental health professional.
Yes.
But also that kid gets a welcoming kit to know that they're not alone in what it is they're going through. You know, there's swag in there that includes fresh underwear, socks, T-shirts, but also that first outfit so they can step into their community with confidence. If you can imagine, you know, like one of the kids I'm working with, Hakeem, he was locked up in the Atlanta Youth Detention Center for 3 years.
Wow.
And so his mother is now forced to buy him an entirely new wardrobe.
Oh.
And that's very difficult to do. Many people can't just run out and get a whole new wardrobe.
Yeah.
And what we're able to do is not necessarily provide an entirely new wardrobe, but at least those basic needs so he can get a start, you know, toiletries, so mom doesn't have to buy that right out of the gate. You know, that outfit that at least he can say, okay, these clothes are fitting. You know, I feel confident I don't have to do what I need to do, you know, in order to have my basic needs met. And
you all also, beyond the swag bag, you all are also doing some community, I don't know what you call it, but I guess I would call it residential treatment places or group homes that are helping too. So talk about that, and then just talk about those pillars of things, because we are kind of running out of time. So we want to make sure that we address those pillars. I love that was powerful.
Thank you.
So if you would address that would be wonderful.
Sure. So the first part of that, you asked me about the swag bag.
Well, we talked about that, but the pillars,
the residential group home,
and the residential group home. But talk about the pillars first, and then the residential group home of what you're doing, because I think those pillars are very vital.
Right.
And those pillars are basically the foundation of what the mission of what you all do as the Showcase Group.
That's right. So our first pillar is prevention, and prevention is really about keeping our kids out of these detention centers.
I love it.
So like I was saying, there are over 2,000 kids incarcerated just in Georgia alone.
Yes.
And then over 50,000 nationwide. So prevention, we have to make sure that our kids never end up in a detention center to begin with. The second piece is inspiration.
I love it.
So we find that inspiring our kids, inspiring our families, inspiring the communities that they serve in, that's really the first step for us even to connect with the population that we serve.
Yes.
You know, without inspiration, it can really create for a gloomy lifestyle.
Exactly.
You know. Community engagement is another piece that's really big for us, and that's why, you know, we're going into community centers, going into schools, going into churches. Even though our work starts in youth detention centers, we know that the communities that these kids come from have to be strengthened because once they get out, they've got to have resources. So that's where we start there. Then we hit on self-actualization.
I like that.
So someone really seeing their fullest potential, reaching that fullest potential, and really just being the best person that you can be. That looks differently for different people. Some people think the best person that they can be will end up, you know, being a celebrity or a star on Instagram, you know. So it looks different for different people, but you have to become more self-aware and get into that self-actualization.
Exactly.
And facing our future is the final pillar, which is the residential group home portion.
Okay.
And so what we're doing is there are a number of youth who are in the juvenile justice system who are also in the foster care system.
Wow.
And this is how it started for me. My kids, I actually am a foster parent of kids who have been in and out of the juvenile justice system. And I realized that something needed to happen within lockdown to get these kids started, to really start to shape them in a way that they can make better decisions once they went back into the community. And so as part of the kids who are locked up in these detention centers and still in foster care, they will stay incarcerated only because they're in foster care.
Yeah.
So if they were to serve 6 months because of whatever they did, because they're in foster care, they will stay in the system for a year, an additional, 2 years, because there are no placements.
Wow.
So that's why we opened our residential foster care home. It's in Franklin, Georgia.
Okay.
And it's currently under renovation, but it will be a 10-bed residential facility. 10 kids will be able to stay
And you're looking for volunteers and also funds.
Absolutely.
Swag bags and phones and everything cost. And I mean, and so definitely. So let's just kind of recap, and then I want you to have your final thoughts and what you want them to take away from this conversation. But we've been talking about how to save our youth and some strategies to save our youth from a mental health perspective for the ones that are just joining. We said, number one, that you need to listen to your young people. Number two, to allow self-expression. Number three, to be an advocate for our youth. Also, the fourth one is to speak positive. Don't just continue to speak negative over your youth, but also affirm them in the good things that they're doing. And then the fifth thing is to get trained and educated around not just mental health, but also around parenting. Some people need parenting classes, parenting groups, support groups to be effective in parenting. And then what I love about the Showcase group, you said that these were the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pillars that this organization is built upon. Number one is prevention. And that's what, why do we wait till somebody get incarcerated to start doing the work? Why don't we start being preventative prior to them getting arrested? And or committing a crime, or being accused of committing a crime, or being on the scene of committing a crime, or whatever. Prevention. Number two was inspiration. Number three was community engagement. Number four was self-actualization. And number five was facing the future, right?
That's right.
And I just think that those pillars are very vital to our conversation. So that's what we've been talking about. How can they reach you for the Showcase group?
Great. So you can visit our website, which is showcasegroup.org.
Okay.
So you can always visit showcasegroup.org.
Okay.
You can also call us, and that number is 678-744-8333. 336. That contact information is also on the website at showcasegroup.org.
Okay. And I think they should watch that video. As soon as you go on the website, there's a video about the swag bag.
That's right.
And John is up there promoting it, and I love it. I just love what your organization is doing.
Thank you.
And I just love what you're doing. I'm so glad that we're in partnership, too, and that we'll be hopefully in the future working together to be able to help. And I mean, because I just love the idea. I love the thoughts of what you're doing and the work and the passion. Because a lot of times we're doing work, but we ain't passionate about it. But you're very passionate about dealing with our youth and also our millenniums.
And seeing results of our work.
Yes, and seeing the results. And so, you know, he needs your support. It's a nonprofit organization, 501c3 nonprofit. So support his organization. Give $20, $30, $20,000 to the organization so we can support our youth. Also, I have the Foundation for Therapeutic and Spiritual Empowerment Services. It's a nonprofit, 501c3. You can also donate to that particular organization. So organizations are doing things around mental health to help our community, to help our youth, and also our adults, to help us, help us in spiritual communities. Because that's the thing I always talk about, John, is that we missing out on in spiritual communities because we're not addressing mental health. We're not partnering with mental health practices and mental health organizations to be able to help people.
Well, thank you, Brian, for bridging the gap. I mean, that's, you know, you're an advocate out there and helping to bridge these communities to the spiritual community as well.
That's my goal. That's my calling. And, you know, I get some, you know, some people don't like it, but hey, I'm going to continue to do what I do. And even this show is a part, the Therapeutic Conversation show is a part about having conversations around mental health, spirituality, and empowerment. And so you fit the mold for this show. And so I'm so glad that you're here. I'm so glad, and I hope that you all were, and let's just call off some names. Levita, thank you for joining us. Jakarta was there earlier. Kelly did make a comment. I want to make sure we address the comment about listening. She said something about that we need to be educated in the communities or something. I saw that earlier. So thank you for your comment, and I fully agree with you with that. And we also had, is it Patrice? She was on, and you know, and many other people probably that are on, and I appreciate you all. Just continue to send us comments, continue to keep the me and the show in your prayers and thoughts. So I mean, this is Dr. Brian Jones, LPC. I'm joined here with John Kennebrew. He's going to give us a final thought just real quick to wrap up and to tell us what do you want them to take away from this conversation dealing with saving our youth and children from a mental health perspective. And then we're going to close out. Thank you for your time. Join us every Saturday from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. on 108 Praise Radio. Thank you, Courtney, to Courtney and the staff here for all of you all support and providing this platform. Please reach out to 108 Praise Radio too. I mean, sometimes it's difficult every week, you know, since I know I've been here since October, September doing this. It is not easy work. So send out a message to 108 Praise Radio to let them know that you're praying for them because there's a lot of personalities, radio personalities, media personalities that are on here. Pray for us because it's not easy every week. And, you know, pray for funding. Because, I mean, and give and support, but also send your prayers and encouragement. Even me, I need encouragement sometimes because this work, you know, I don't get the accolades. You know,
to stay inspired.
You know, I'm like the rebel, but I don't mind being the rebel, but I don't get the accolades for the work that I do. I never got an award ever for what I do. But guess what? I'm not giving up.
That's right.
And I'm not going to stop doing what God has called me to do. But nobody has honored me. I know people haven't done no work and have never been honored, you know, and it's the truth. I mean, and I'm not fussing. I'm just saying the truth. I mean, they haven't done anything, but I'm in the trenches.
And this work
and you're in the trenches. And, you know, and we don't get awards and honored.
It's not reward-driven work, you know.
No.
It's one of those things that, like I said, you know, this is a hidden population that we serve. So.
You know, we don't get the accolades, you know, but guess what? We're going to continue to do the work. We're going to continue to do what God has called us to do for such a time as this because we do get rewards because we see the fruit of what God has called us to do. So give us the final thoughts, and then we're going to close. Thank y'all for joining us. like us on Facebook, Therapeutic Conversation Show, the Joshua Generation Care and Consulting Services, and the Foundation for Therapeutic and Spiritual Empowerment Services. Take us away, John, with your final thought as we close.
Thanks. Well, again, thank you, Brian, for even having me on the show.
Thank you for coming.
Helping me spread the word and your great work as well.
Thank you. I appreciate. Look, that's my reward. Thank you.
There you go. Look,
most people don't even say thank you.
Yeah.
Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I just want to encourage everyone. If there's anything that you can do, is learn to be an advocate. And you know, if you're not necessarily an advocate with our organization or the youth and families that we serve, you can learn to be an advocate, one, for yourself, but also an advocate for others in the community that you want to serve. You may identify some other folks who are out there with some issues or some mental health challenges, who may be experiencing trauma. It's important just to learn to be an advocate. We've had a huge mentor movement, and that became a big trend, but now we're moving more towards advocacy. So if there were anything I would encourage today, is that you take the opportunity to give us a call, go to our website and contact us, and let us know that you are interested in becoming an advocate, and we'll train you and really give you those steps that are necessary to create change wherever you are.
Wonderful. Yeah. Thank you, John, for joining us. And you're going to come back and see me?
Absolutely. I'll be back.
All right. And then reach out in churches and spiritual centers. Please reach out to John and the Showcase Group and support them. And thank you for your time again. This is Dr. Brian Jones, LPC. This is Therapeutic Conversation Show on 108 Praise Radio. I'll see you next week. Take care.